Back to another episode of Leaving the Farm right here on Revolution Radio, Freedomslips.com. Also, simulcasting on these changing times at Ning.com. Tonight, this is Leaving the Farm with Don and Tami. We have Don with us as my co-host. Are you there, Don?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you?
Well, how about yourself?
We're doing really well. You know, today, so much more news about attorney arrest, charges, sentencing. It's like an explosion of the new sureties being taken into the holding corporations to discharge congressional bankruptcy, and it's just so amazing and beautiful to see. What are you seeing?
Well, a lot of things that, you know, you're posting, but locally there's shake up around here, and there was even the FBI I caught wind of down at the county court, the county clerk's office.
What was that one about?
I didn't find out too much about it, other than someone had, you know, mentioned it to me in passing when they went down there. People are kind of closed-lipped around here when things go, because there's basically a ruling family, you know, like a clan.
Right.
And one of them actually went to jail a couple of years back for embezzling money for the Katrina, for cleaning roads and stuff like that. So, and it's still ongoing. So everybody's kind of tight-lipped, you know.
Right. How does it look down there in the areas devastated by Katrina? Are they even fixed up yet?
Oh, no. The people are moving out in droves. They haven't, I'd say if there's a 20% of the total population that was here before, only remains.
Right. And I think that it sounds like it's intentional. You know, they haven't fixed anything. They're redistributing, you know, based on code violations. I know that, you know, this natural disaster has a great influx of revenue in the beginning for attorneys, because they're saying, well, that's not up to code, that's not up to code, that's not up to code, you guys are bad. And that's how they create and generate revenue constantly as, you know, their function. But in the end, none of those FEMA funds went anywhere, and what most people don't realize is that Federal Emergency Management Act means to move around the state of being, the human being. And so when the governor, pilot, declares states of emergency, that is how you're crucified. That is how you're stuck into institutionalized states. Those are the states of emergency.
Well, I remember as a kid when they built the I-10, and you can tell when government is doing a project. They construct, and I've seen it done 3 or 4 different times, and it's the basic same thing here, that letting the people move out, raising the prices so high that people can't move back, because before the storm it was a retirement community.
Right.
And now they rent whatever places they have to rent. They want $800-900 a month.
Right. And so it becomes subsidized housing, and that's how the federal government gets away with doing what they've done for so long. When they subsidize things like daycare, housing, everything else, they're controlling and price fixing the rent. And
right.
People,
the realtors have dried up on the vine, basically, you know.
Right. And that's where it all comes from, you know. Brokers, real estate brokers only broker the human being, and that's what they're doing. They're just in the action of prostitution, and here you are. You know, the human being is being prostituted. Your stuff is all destroyed by what appears to be natural disasters, and it's not. The Corps of Engineers knew what they were doing. The cloud seeding alone controls where the water falls, where it doesn't fall, you know, drought conditions and any other relative geoengineered state. That's all controlled by the municipality, and so lives lost, that was murder, genocide. These attorneys were targeting human beings for depopulation, and they're still targeting. And I know that in places that have been devastated by these natural disasters that are not natural disasters in any way, shape, or form, the rate of them stealing children, legally kidnapping children and the elderly is exponential.
Right, yeah. They had a lot of that right after the storm, where they hit people, they were taking them and relocating them all across the country.
Right. And they now do that in every war zone that they create.
Yeah.
We teach about hearts and minds here a lot, and garnering the female. If you go back to the origins of the hearts and mind technique with Britain and the Malayan conflict, compared to now, all of these females and people signed up on the rosters for their equivalent of the Department of Health and Human Services for housing aid, food aid, medical benefits and whatnot. And I mean, it was absolutely horrifying to hear some of the reports coming out, especially Bo's report on what they're doing to Malaysian women. And part of that is there's one woman that's in prison. She's not able to see her child. She's never done anything wrong. They're just keeping her secluded for her safety. What the heck is that? And of course the child's going to have reactive behavior, and they're not going to fare well after that. And that's the entire intent. Their intent is to destroy the children.
Right, yeah, and then what that does, that allows them to set up other agencies for to try to supposedly help to take care of the problem they created initially.
Absolutely, and that child will grow up and it'll need welfare benefits, housing benefits, medical health industry, and especially mental health, because it's being destroyed right now. It was ripped from its mother's arms. They won't even let the mother breastfeed this child. I mean, it's that horrifying, all because she engaged with welfare, all because she engaged with the other daddy offering her all sorts of perks and benefits. And right here on CNN this week, a child went in for an elective surgery, a tonsillectomy, and in the process of murder, this child is now brain dead. Her poor family is watching her brain dead on life support. They want to adhere to ritualistic customs and everything else, and the torture is just absolutely abhorrent. I cannot believe that any society would allow this type of torture to be occurring. I mean, but it's good that CNN is reporting this. This is in the mainstream. They're identifying where the problems lie, and part of that is the medical industry itself. Now, the derivatives coming off of that child that's now brain dead, kept on life support, is absolutely horrifying. This goes into the ICD-10 International Classification of Diseases and Disorders. And, I mean, it's sick. This is going to stop. These parents are asking that life support be maintained for this poor, innocent child, but the child was killed in the hospital, and right now the hospital is going along with the life support, and you know what the reason for that is. They want to harvest the child. Usually they need time to convince the parents that, they should donate organs and everything else, when in reality this is all stemming from a doctor's hands. Child.
Correct.
Yep, and it was stated that the child fared well through the surgery. She bled out, and they let her bleed out in a hospital setting. Doctors surrounding her, nurses surrounding her, and she bled to death. And I mean, this is absolutely horrifying. This is an elective surgery. It's almost akin to cosmetic surgery, and everybody needs to be aware to stop these things. Your tonsils are necessary. They're part of your immune system. Your adenoids are part of your immune system. Yes, they're going to swell when you're exposed to what you're exposed to now in these garbage foods and the air and the water. Your body's going to react with allergies, with swelling of the tonsils, swelling of the adenoids, things like that, because that's part of your immunity. That tells your body you need to remove yourself from that environment or stop ingesting whatever you're ingesting that's making you ill.
Right, yeah. And this ties in with those other couple stories that you reported on recently about the, I think it was the Amish girl. They want to try to get her back in for some type of therapy. And what I saw last that I think they left the area, and then the one you spoke about last night, I think, or Bo did, about they taking the baby from the mother,
Right.
through a cesarean. That
Right.
was, but being reported in CNN, that's unusual.
Absolutely. And that one, the cesarean baby was 2 years ago, and they still haven't given that child back in the UK. It was a forced cesarean section. They had no concerns, no evidence whatsoever of child abuse or drug use during pregnancy or anything of that nature. And at that point in time, 2010, they were still just running them right through the legal process, taking babies from females that are giving birth immediately. I mean, it's just, and of course they hit the mother when she's down. If she just had a cesarean section, it's not like she can go after them, if she's down on
No, I think they do that on purpose. That's why they, employ or initiate that particular surgery, because what it does, it disables you.
Absolutely.
For a time,
Absolutely. And when you're not going through a natural childbirth, your body's not reacting naturally either. You've got so many things that our bodies are capable of so much. And during the birth process, if it's allowed to go naturally, of course, the contractions that a female is feeling is actually an orgasm. That's the same muscle contractions as an orgasm. And at that point in time, that's when the mother is producing pitocin, which is the bonding hormone necessary to bond with the child. If you facilitate a cesarean section without allowing the body to promote pitocin, the mother isn't able to bond with the child, and that's another part of the agenda.
Right.
That immediately the child reacts with attachment disorder because they've been ripped from their only bond.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrifying what they're doing, and this agenda is not going to be tolerated any longer. And here we are, of course.
Well, it's amazing that, prior to, I guess, the allopathic medicine that they employed with this, women had been given natural birth for centuries. And it must have worked, because look at all the people they got.
Absolutely.
And, basically all of this, from, what I've read, is about profit and control.
And that's it. That's all it is. And the majority of these poor mothers going into the hospital setting, they get pregnant. They think they need medical assistance. They think they need help. They're taught to keep up with the Joneses. They don't realize how little it takes to actually exist on this planet. They're just taught that they need all of these things and special doodads and toys and whatever. And they're not realizing that a lot of times you can afford these things. Home births are the way to go. I mean, it's like when you're allowed or able in another setting to give birth to your child naturally, that's the best thing. There's less risk to the child.
Right.
I know when a mother's put on her back in a hospital bed in the means and ways of labor and delivery in this country, the likelihood of the child dying is like 50% at the inception, because right. it increases the labor process itself, and she's not allowed to progress naturally, and the child, a lot of times they're born lack of oxygen. That's where you see the cerebral palsy. That's where you see all of these new fangled diseases and disorders being diagnosed, is because of the staff at the hospital promoting the cause of the illness or the injury.
I know I saw 3 live births in my life when I was in the Philippines, and the girls that had it, they just squatted.
Right.
And the baby dumped, and guess what? They were up and they were walking around like nothing.
Right.
And then I've seen one here, and I had 3 sisters, and they, depending on, I guess, the mental capacity of the individual, some are a little bit more rugged to an extent, and some are a little bit more sensitive, I guess is a better word to use.
Well, and
but
taught to be sensitive.
exactly, yeah, that's it. They're specialized, like you said.
Right. The definition of pain. What's pain? You know, and then the female is coddled throughout her life in the westernized culture, and she never experiences actual pain, but she's taught that pain is something else, and so she's always got this mindset that things hurt and they don't feel good. But pregnancy and delivery is like the most wonderful experience if you're able to actually experience it in a natural way. Rather than, you know, being forced into these pigeonholes. When you experienced the births outside of the westernized culture, they didn't take very long, did they?
No, it happened within, I think, maybe a half hour.
Right.
It was so quick, and I was just totally amazed, you know, because I've fooled with farm animals before, too, horses and cows and such, and I've seen birds there. And it was basically the same way. They laid on their side, and next thing you know, it's over.
Yep.
It just slides right out, you know.
Right. Gravity.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing when it's able to occur naturally.
Right. Then I had a nephew when I was staying up there recovering with my sister. She had 2 babies while I was there in that year and a half, and she did it in a birthing pool.
Right.
Had a little bathtub. I didn't go to it, but she had 2 babies while I was there. And, you know, she decided to have the natural birth like that. So it's good, you know. I mean, I think.
It is. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of people jumping on this, quote, movement now and you know, allowing themselves to be just natural. I mean, let's get back to nature. We don't need the medical industry. That's another news item of this week. GSK to stop paying doctors, a major marketing overhaul. December 17th on Reuters. GlaxoSmithKline will stop paying doctors for promoting its drugs and scrap prescription targets for its marketing staff. A first for an industry battling scandals over its sales practices and a challenge for its peers to follow suit. Now, this is absolutely disgusting, okay? So here you have doctors, they're given samples of all of these medications without looking at the what the medications are doing to human beings, what these prescriptions actually do, and they're given incentive to promote these medications so the doctor becomes an advertiser.
Right, it's a pill mill, that's all it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and we've seen this week. Sadly, on Monday morning, we did lose Joseph Reynolds. His body gave out. They were trying to detox him. He hadn't had any of the Ativan or the Haldol for a while. He hadn't been being dosed at all. For a couple days there, they had dosed him overnight only so that he could sleep, trying to take him off of the addictive medication. But his body did give out this week, and we are saddened by this, but also glad in that we did evidence the attempted murder as they were facilitating such live through the court. So that is on evidence, and in fact and indeed the murder has been facilitated according to the year-and-a-day rule, criminalized-wise. So they have been, you know, they've been caught red-handed killing a human being. So that is being dealt with swiftly as we speak.
Yeah, it's horrible. That happens multiple times every day across the country.
Absolutely. And in more ways than most are even aware of. I know a lot of people, you know, head injury is like the new designer injury anymore. And so many people have been head injured. So many babies, of course, have been born lack of oxygen. So many situational occurrences that fall within the realms of the silent weapon for quiet wars and the induction method. But the other side, the flip side of that is these medications, these anti-seizure medications. For one, phenobarb. Now, this week we were studying after, you know, Joseph Reynolds passes away. we were getting all of our evidence in order and everything else for this case. And the interesting aspect we came across was the lethal injection medications that are used for the execution process of prisoners. Now, in the United States Incorporated, other countries have banned the use of certain drugs for lethal injection, although the United States Incorporated continues to roll on and on and on with its sick and twisted methodology. But, any type of paralytic, and that includes Ativan, that includes Haldol, that includes all of these medications, but one of them was phenobarbital, and that one in particular is overly prescribed for antipsychotic and anti-seizure aspects of humanity, and that one alone, it almost needs its own show. It's so disgusting because the amount of people that are on it, long-term use is guaranteed to produce death.
Right. Mm-hmm.
These things are not kind or gentle things pushed by these pharmaceutical companies. Their intention is slow and methodical death. And
it's like a snowball running down the hill.
Right.
You just started with the acceptance of the taking the medication, and eventually over a period of time it takes over the body.
Right, the addictive nature, and then you don't want to be without it. And often, and we've seen this in the chemotherapeutic realm of antibacterial use as well. The trimetsulfate is a chemotherapeutic antibiotic, and so when specifically children, 6 months old, 9 months old, these babies are being targeted by not only the medical industry, but the court industry as well, the legal industry. And what's happening is, for one aspect only of this trimetsulfate, the child will be placed on chronic long-term use of this chemotherapeutic antibiotic. And I know they were going to do that with Mikkel when she was little. She had ear infection a couple times, and the pediatrician, I was actually going to a pediatrician believing in all the crap, and I had gone in there and she said, we want to put her on 6 months of this antibiotic, and I declined the offer, and of course I had some fallout from that, and I didn't realize until many years later why that was. Now, when a baby is put on long-term use of trimetsulfate, eventually yeast begins to grow in the baby's lungs, and at the time that the yeast is so all over, the child begins to try to cough it up, and that's when you experience the child developing petechiae around the mouth, ears, eyes, nose, and it looks like the child's been shaken or strangled. Now, that has been diagnosed for so long as shaken baby syndrome, but it's at inception, it comes from the medical industry and goes right into the legal industry, and it's another way of not only killing children, but also stealing them off of innocent parents because of the aspect of the child not being unable to choke up and cough up the yeast out of their lungs. It's created by, and this drug is sold all over, and most people know it. It's Bactrim and Septra. They switch it up, and it's just horrifying what its usage is on that aspect alone. On another aspect is the doctor shopping aspect, and there's a lot of people who experience chronic disease and discomfort, and they're going back and forth to the doctor for these antibiotics for colds and whatnot. Chronic use of trimetsulfate in the adult population appears as AIDS and HIV later on down the line. When you break down the body through the chemotherapeutic aspect, the body reacts. It doesn't have an immunity any longer, and that is again facilitated through prescriptive measures. That means writing before something is. Prescription is allowing a predetermined outcome, and that outcome is always death. But in between, it's the derivatives related to the illness or disease or discomfort.
Right. Well, you would think when they do the research on when they manufacturing these chemical drugs, they have to test it on something. And I'm pretty sure you'll get a pattern of what will develop over a period of time. Then they just change the subject matter. They start giving it to the human beings.
Well, no, it's the other way around. Let me find this document real quick, and I'll read it out loud.
Okay.
They have, rules of procedure. They have contracts. The FDA has contracts with the Freeburg's Ethics Commission to use human beings as human test subjects. And for a lot of years now, that is what's been occurring. So every time and especially like for these little innocuous medications that look, so innocent, like Tylenol and acetaminophen and Motrin, you've got ibuprofen, these types of products and other NSAIDs and everything else. When they recall those medications, they're giving you notice. They don't change the medication. They're just giving you notice through the media venue to tell you, look, these things kill you. Well, after that, they do not alter the composition of these medications. They do not change them in any way. They might change the bottle, and maybe they'll have a warning on it that says it'll kill you. But the main purpose is to let you know that it does kill you. So if you take it after that, that's clean hands doctrine. They're no longer responsible. You're the one that's committing suicide.
Well, that makes sense in that aspect where you're being noticed and it's giving you a choice, correct?
Absolutely. What appears as a choice, and it's like, it's absolutely horrifying. The preamble to the 2006 Rules of Procedure, Freeburg's Ethics Commission International, or FECI, revised version 2006. Preamble. The Freeburg's Ethics Commission International, or FECI, was founded in 1980 and is oriented on the United States Review Boards. Since its inception, FECI has reviewed and provided expert opinion for clinical studies using human test subjects. After more than 25 years of existence, the FECI has achieved a national and international reputation for professionalism. Professionalism. They've gotten an award for professionalism. They're not concerned about the human being. They're not concerned about your children. They don't view you as a child. They don't view you as a human being. You're just a number. You are a human test subject according to the FDA and the Freeburg's Ethics Commission, which is, FECI means to kill the fee. F-E-C-I means to kill the fee. And of course, fee days of the fee, when you go into court and you're with a fiduciary, everything is written. When you're patronizing this thing, you're volunteering to be all of these titles: human test subject, human resource, injured, diagnosed, all of these titles. When you're seeking or assuming these things, you're going to get what they give you, and part of that is your benefit to work and be basically a slave. Your body is for their use under that contract.
Now, years ago, they were given, you spoke about ear infections. I recall they were using a lot of the tubes coming out of children's ears. Was that a ploy as well?
I believe so, because normally the eustachian tube it allows the drainage between the sinuses down the throat so that it can be swallowed. Now, if they altered the composition, such as behind the child's ears, that's teaching their body to the postnasal drip to otherwise flow down the throat, which is how it's aspirated into lungs. So now we're seeing higher incidence rates of bronchitis and pneumonia, and that is caused just simply from postnasal drip being aspirated instead of swallowed. And at the time of on every Veterans Day during that span, the Ohio Attorney General's office said, the man who calls himself Bobby Thompson, but who authorities say is a lawyer and former Army Captain John Donald Cody, also was ordered by a judge to pay more than $6.3 million in fines and more than $330,000 to cover court and prosecution costs. The defendant was convicted in a Cuyahoga County court last month of running a telemarketing scam through his Florida-based U.S. Navy Veterans Association. Authorities have said the charity raised about $100 million from donors in 41 states from 2002 to 2010, but little went to help veterans. Plain Dealer newspaper of Cleveland reported. And we're seeing a lot of these things. I would like to see more of his partners and other co-conspirators charged as well. And of course, this includes the federal government itself. These charity scams are ways and means of embezzling money out of the Treasury. And so when you are operating such as these 501c3 programs and everything else fraudulently, the government is actually paying usually what is a CIA intelligence production to produce intelligence rather than helping human beings. And that is no longer not only tolerated, but it's no longer even legal. It is unlawful to aid and abet the known enemy of humankind, and that includes any private donations into the federal state. This week in Utah, Salt Lake Tribune reports Utah attorney sentenced sparks courtroom chaos. Midvale lawyer sentenced to a year in jail for firing shots at paralegal's condo. Midvale attorney Howard W. Stone III was sentenced Monday to a year in jail for shooting bullets into the home of a woman he had allegedly stalked. He put her in fear of her life, she told the court. He endangered her young son and damaged her property. I think my favorite part of this is a quote from the perpetrator of the crime. And, quote, Stone, who represented himself in the case, told the judge that he and Johnson had had an affair. He said the infidelity eventually contributed to the unraveling of his marriage at the time, and he was angry. Quote, it's like you roll out of bed, sprain your ankle, your wife says she's leaving you, you go to work to find out you've lost your job, so you go home and the dog barks and you kick the dog. The dog didn't do anything, it just happened to be there, Stone said. I kicked the dog, I wasn't mad at her, I was mad at me, end quote. That is profound. Don, have you been through a divorce? That's what every father, human being has been through under the legal process machine for so long. You know, it's like you wake up one day and your wife's gone, she's taking your kids, she's got a restraining order against you, and all the world is falling apart. The rug is pulled out from under you. But now we're seeing the flip side of this, and the attorney being the surety is now having those long, unlucky, bad, heart-rendering days. What do you think?
Yeah, well, personally, I've never been married because I remember when this started back in the 70s, you know, wanting to invade into a person's family. The women that I had, you know, wanted to marry, I told them, I said, you're going to marry me and me alone. And if that's the case, then I'm not the guy to marry.
Absolutely. So they declined, right?
Right, yeah. Huh?
Yeah, and it's, I'm glad that you're so honest and forthright from the beginning because, you know, we would have saved billions and billions and billions of dollars if males had been taught that years ago. You know, don't tolerate it. Don't look at what appears to be normalized behavior in this sick, twisted society where the psychopath is actually speaking on behalf of the female. And those aren't our words. And you know, it's so sad that, you know, so many men have been screwed over by legal process simply based on their indoctrination. You know, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, I've seen it. You know, the friends of mine that have been married, and the divorce rate is at least 50%.
Right.
And it's horrible because the children then become used as pawns against, you know, one another, and they start using them as, I guess, I can't think of the word right now, but they put the kids in the middle. They don't even have enough maturity to say, we'll talk this and settle this. They bring the kids and they start calling, name call. Then the attorney steps in and backs one to the other, and then you have a free-for-all.
Absolutely, and the attorneys always cash in.
Right, they just like, they're the taxi driver. They don't care where you're going. Just tell them where you're going, and you pay the fee.
Yeah. And
It's horrible.
they pit the male against the female. The female is made to be the informant. That's why they have those little forms. Fill this out. Tell me what kind of stocks and bonds you have. What do you have under the mattress? What do you got in your closet? That can be yours, honey. All you have to do is tell me where it's at, And the females promise so many things when in reality it's the attorney. He just needs to know where everything is, or she just needs to know where everything is so they can go after it. Although the female thinks that she's got, some kind of special properties that allow her to be immune from loss, she still loses the most, her and the children.
Right, yeah. And I even remember when I went overseas, because, that was one way to go to try to find a wife. But the Western culture has infested some of those places, and some of the women there were pretty much the same thing, because I know, they want to marry an American and come back. And it was really an eye-opening thing for me, and it was totally disappointing from what I saw.
Right. And it's sick because, it stems from the first inception of indoctrination, religious indoctrination, and then you've got children going through the public school system, and all of this exposure to, the absolute adversary to human life and living, of course, is the politically correct mentality, all of this liberalism, the ability of the female to just run around lawless. She's absolutely lawless. She doesn't have anything binding her because she's got a court, an army of attorneys standing waiting in the wings for her to choose sides, and that's what it comes down to. That's Satan there in the middle. She's asked. Right. They're telling her there's greener pastures, and she's running off, believing these things, and in the end, she doesn't get anything. Their attorneys have it.
Right. Yeah. And the programming that comes on that boob tube facilitates everything and escalates it to a degree where, even when I'm out and around just in maybe a restaurant or something like that, you hear the conversations going on, and it sounds like cartoons.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable and especially because they'll talk about, I remember, when soap operas first came on, they're playing like those people are real, and they get a real discussion on it, and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? These are fictions. Why are you even worried about something that doesn't exist? My mind doesn't comprehend that way.
Right, and mine doesn't either, and it took us forever to get in depth on what we've done. It takes a lot to do that because the human mind does not compute concepts. We don't compute all of these things and process all of these things that the psychopath does. That's an ability that the psychopath has that the human being cannot have, and that is to, one, view other humans or other beings as objects and things by which to profit off of. And,
it's a street hustle. It's a real quick street hustle. Right.
Really quick. Smooth.
Yeah.
Very, very smooth talking snake in that garden. And it's always offering, sticks and carrots. That's what it's all about. What can I give you to make you turn against your husband? Or what can I give you to make you turn against your wife when in reference to the effeminate male? The psychopathic female and the effeminate male they're the same psychopath. They're broken. They don't have a frontal lobe, and they're not able to conceptualize anything as a human would.
Now that's an interesting subject, that lacking a frontal lobe. And I heard you speak to that before. Was that a crossbreeding between the was it the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon?
No, because when you have, it's an evolutionary thing. So even when Cro-Magnon, they were forcing Cro-Magnon to breed with Neanderthal male, of course, and that is the story of Eve in the garden there. At that time, they killed off the Neanderthal females, but it doesn't work because they still throw a human being. That's just what's going to happen because the frontal lobe is from the evolutionary process.
Oh, I see.
Can't go backwards. Two psychopaths could probably breed a psychopath, but a psychopath and a human cannot breed a psychopath biologically. They can be created by engineering, social engineering, shock doctrine,
Right.
or medical influence. You know, my baby brother had his brain, you know, it was almost like a frontal lobotomy based on the medication and recreational drug use that he was using at the time. And, you know, all of this is intended for one outcome and one outcome only, and that is depopulation.
Right, yeah. And I guess that's why they import the drugs that they do, because it makes it easier, like you talk about, to move them to the edge of the herd to pick them off.
Absolutely, and especially, you know, first you're telling them you're not good enough, you're not making enough money, you're not good enough, and you're not working far enough or fast enough, or, you know, you've got this female psychopath that's established as the one promoting, it's called unrealistic expectations. So the majority of males that have been married or had relationships to that female know exactly what I'm talking about, but she'll go, you know, you'll get home at night and she'll say, well, you're never home, you never spend time with the kids, and then the next sentence is you don't work enough, you don't earn enough money, and so it's back and forth with these unrealistic expectations, and a lot of times she's going on presumptions and assumptions, so she doesn't even realize what she's saying. These conflicting statements, she only knows what she wants as an end goal, and she wants more stuff. She wants more time. Right. She wants, you know, and she wants it all, and she wants it all right now, and she's been taught she doesn't have to wait for anything. She can run to court and get a restraining order against you in 5 minutes under the action of feminism. So it's, you know, it's coming now to where, you know, she is being held accountable, but this is such a shock for her and these attorneys. They've never been held accountable before. These are all brand new concepts to their brains.
Yeah, well, they've been having smooth sailing for quite some time.
Absolutely. And that's not going to happen any longer. You know, it's just, it's so sad that, first of all, they could underestimate humanity. Second of all, they can underestimate or overestimate themselves. I know that one news article we were going through yesterday and this last week regarding the attorney that was killed out in, oh goodness, let me go find it here. It was very, very interesting to see such a thing. He was actually murdered.
Is that the one that died in the jail?
No, the one that, there's one that tried to commit suicide. They sewed him back up, and they're using him like a yo-yo. I mean, that one is something that I never, ever thought that I would see. Because here he is, he's in jail, and he's in jail for murder. He was a doctor, attorney. He murdered his wife. He's been sentenced, and they're saying that he slit open his groin, by which he committed suicide. Which, that's impossible. I mean, it doesn't happen like that. But they fixed him up and got him through the little emergency there. But, man, they're just running him right through the medical industry itself. Now, this one's on CNN as well, CNN.com. New Jersey police, lawyer killed by carjackers after his Range Rover at upscale mall. Now, this whole thing, it's not that long, so I'll probably go through the whole thing. But it comes across as a commercial, and it was so profound to read. Quote, it was an upscale, expensive vehicle, a 2012 silver Range Rover, sitting unoccupied in a parking lot at an upscale, expensive New Jersey mall crowded with Sunday holiday shoppers. Police said the luxury SUV owners, a 30-year-old Hoboken attorney and his wife, returned to it after shopping, walking straight into an apparent carjacking attempt. A few seconds and a few bullets later, the young attorney lay shot in the head and dying in a shopping mall parking lot. His shocked and stunned wife likely in a panic nearby, as two suspects fled from the scene in the Range Rover. On Monday, New Jersey's legal community, friends and family were mourning the death of Dustin Friedman, who police said had performed one last act for his wife before the couple was accosted. He had opened the car door for her.
Yeah.
Now,
Tami, for a second, I gotta break away for a second. I'll be right back.
And then I'll finish reading. Down towards the bottom, a manhunt for the suspects was launched, with authorities fanning out from the mall with its 150-store roster of retailers, including Cartier, Prada, Gucci, and Dior, in addition to Bloomingdale's and Neiman Marcus. The Essex County, New Jersey Sheriff's Crime Stoppers program announced a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the suspects. Police described the two still at-large suspects as being armed and dangerous, but beyond that, few details of the investigation were released. So when they were exploring all of these high-end retail stores, they were actually only looking for two armed suspects, so basically gun in hand, without a description, and it's profound to see that this attorney is being treated as furniture. I mean, he's being treated like he's less than a Land Rover, less than these stores. It's something that I never, ever thought that I would see in any realm anyway, for the attorneys to actually be treated so grotesque. These things are yucky. Uh-oh, sounds like a tiny bug. Well, when he comes back, I'll have him turn up his volume and see if that helps. Let's see. There were so many things to cover. Let me go back over to my wall. Oh, this week, Jessica. Earlier this week, Elizabeth contacted me, Jessica's mom, and during the contact, I was evidenced, we garnered evidence that Jessica had been arrested by Laredo police while registering at her college. And in the incident, Jessica was arrested and her 4 children were removed from her care and custody. At that time, we had contacted Laredo police. I called down there and I inquired, hey, do you have this person? And Jessica's a citizen of the United States Incorporated, and of course she was registering for college at the time. But what happened was so icky. Oh my gosh, it was just so icky. So this cop tells me, I said, Bingham, and he says, Jessica, and I said, yes. And he says, no, we don't have anybody there, and I'm like, no, you were just looking at it. How are you looking at it if you don't have her in your custody? And so he got belligerent with me, asking me, how did she call? How did she get out? How did she notify others that she was under arrest? And I said, clearly she was on the phone with her mother during the time of their arrest. And so it wasn't just a call. I emailed back channel to the Laredo administration, and I said, look, you're in the action, evidence to be in the action of genocide, attempted genocide, and threats of genocide, because when she was released a few minutes later, they had threatened to take CPS after her based on trumped-up charges as well, or trumped-up allegation. And so it's basically making them toe the line. They're not supposed to be kidnapping human beings any longer, and it won't be tolerated. But it was very interesting to speak to her, speak to the jail officer, and realize that there was something being planned there. They were gaming something, and in subsequent conversations, there may have been indication that she was having a rough time during the holidays, and I believe firmly that they were about to commit suicide for her and take the kids off of her because of the dynamics of the outside family. Extended family is states and states away from where Jessica is, and the majority during the holidays would believe if a cop called you and said, hey, look, your kid just committed suicide. You go into the shock of that and everything else, but most believe that, and I'm thankful that Elizabeth had the forethought to call us, and Jessica also had the forethought to, stay out of their grasp, and it was
I'm back now.
I'm glad you're back.
Okay, thank you.
It's been a... Oh, yeah, and in the TCT chat, they were asking if you could turn up your microphone so they could hear you.
I got it as loud as I can.
Okay.
It's allowed.
Okay, I'll have the audios up as soon as we're done, too. When we go to commercial here, I'll try to fix it and see if I can do anything to help the volume level on the TCT side. Also,
it's probably operator error on my part,
or mine. I'm not good with these virtual cables. That's crazy.
Yeah. I was brought up on the rotary dial. You put it in there and you spin it.
Right. And CBs, and we had transistor radios and things like that didn't have all these buttons and doodads.
Right, yeah. I used to be stationed by the television. I was the changer.
Yep, absolutely. Before the remote, there were 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds.
Yeah. So when I figured that out about 10 years old, I stopped coming home.
Fed up with it.
Yeah.
By the way, Revolution Radio is also scheduled to go live onto iHeartRadio as of January. Hawk's been doing a lot of upgrades lately, and if you would like to donate to the station, please go to www.freedomslips.com and click on our listener support pages. Check out this site. Weisenberg's got it Christmassy and all of these holiday callers. And, of course, if you go to the chat, freedomslips.com/new chat/live.htm, you can go over to the left, and you can get to the Hawksnest, our schedules, donate button is right there, a holiday card if you'd like to sign the holiday card. We would love to have you sign the holiday card and see what you're doing for the holidays or what you're feeling for the holidays as well. And every little bit helps if you'd like to donate. I know Hawks dropped a lot of some of those FRNs into upgrades recently, and it's hit him pretty hard. From what I understand, it's been a wild run. I'll tell you that much. This is just everything is just it's coming together so quickly, but it's such an expense to keep everything running, get us out to as many as we can, and that lays on Hawk until we get in those donations. So, and again, thank you for supporting the station. To everybody who supports the station, this Indian diplomat. Have you been watching that one?
A little bit. I haven't been paying too close attention to it, but yeah, it is odd. You talking about the woman that was arrested?
Absolutely. All right, we'll be back, folks. Stick around. Hi, and welcome back right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, to Leaving the Farm with Don and Tami. Thanks for joining us each and every Thursday and Saturday night on Studio B. Again, we are a listener-supported radio station, and if you'd like to donate, please visit us at www.freedomslips.com and click on our listener support pages. And again, we thank you for all of your support. Are you back, Don?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. I'm glad to have you. I am so thankful that you're co-hosting with me. And
I truly enjoy it because I get to learn so many different things about what you know as far and the perspective is really. I hear you're a gamer. What does that mean?
Well, I'm trained in principal agent games, and game theory is what politics basically is. Somebody games something to happen using the principal agent aspect, and it's basically the game of the exchequer. And in their system, in their world, they have directors, they have intelligence providers, and all of these things that provide intelligence. And but they're so compartmentalized that they're unable to facilitate a game all by themselves. So it takes a lot of them to do what I do, and that was their downfall. And that's what it says in Revelation. I mean, they delegated their authority to somebody else, so it was their loss.
So basically, what it is, it's a con. Right. You're getting all the information from everyone else, but it's crossed at you, basically. It comes across that desk, and you can see the whole picture where everybody else only sees one part of the machine.
Absolutely, and only experiences one part of the machine at a time. You know, when they start surrounding you with family court issues and divorce and bankruptcy and foreclosures, the minute they do those things, you're taught to go into a state of not only shock and denial, but also shame. You're taught to feel ashamed. You owe all this debt, you believe, and when that occurs, you don't see the players that are playing this game. You're just automatically assuming that you're a bad boy or a bad girl, and that's the intent of policy. That's their agenda, is to maintain you as that bad girl, bad boy use under commercial use or commercial unit. And in that, you're always earning the right to be. You're always striving and buying something else from that law merchant, education or time or whatever else it has to offer. It offers you everything. It's like a big mall.
It's like actors goading the audience, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's over and over again. Before the break, we were talking about the Indian diplomat that was arrested by the United States before we got caught up by the commercial break or top of the hour break. What do you think is going on?
That was in New York, right?
Right. What do you think?
Well, I know you posted something a while back. There was another Indian diplomat that had some type of thing with pedophilia or something like that.
Right.
And then I know, too, geopolitically, with the contracts that are being taken through different minerals, Afghanistan. So it's got to have some kind of tie into that because, like you say, the lawyers write all the contracts or the negotiations.
Until now.
Yeah, well, until now. But what I'm saying, prior to that, they do as business as usual.
Absolutely. And this story with the Indian diplomat, it's very interesting to me to watch on the global scale, as you said, geopolitical, because of the trade agreements. The trade agreements were, of course, with China, India, Korea, United States, India, Korea, China. And, it seems like there's been a little bit of a falling down that's been occurring this last couple months since the genocide document came out, the Genocide Order from the United States court, because India is having a rough time with its trade relations and diplomatic relations in between India and the United States Incorporated, which of course would be upset because India's the one with the trade agreements with Korea for the natural resources.
Correct, yeah. And that they're building their economies now because the marketplace has been moved to that side of the globe.
Absolutely, and the attorneys are all under the Pyongyang project, which is a capacity building project. It has nothing to do with anything of a social or cultural dynamic. It's a capacity building project, and we gave them lots of capital.
Yeah, tell them to bring their skis, huh?
Absolutely, there's beautiful ski resorts, and Dennis Rodman was there today. He landed earlier today, and sounds like his trip is going really beautifully.
Yeah, but that ought to be all right to have a basketball court out there, too.
Absolutely. They need to require, each one of their basketball teams to have how many players? 542 players on it?
About that, yeah. And then you can play Irish basketball and throw 1,000 basketballs on the court.
We'll make it sarcastable like on South Park. We'll just go for all of it.
Yeah. Kenny's being replaced by multiple actors. Yeah.
Yeah, poor Kenny.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be, what's this new one? A state rep in Cincinnati I was reading earlier. A Warren County state representative and his former business partner will be on trial in April facing securities fraud and theft charges. The trial for Representative Pete Beck, Republican from Mason, and John W. Fussner will begin April 7th in the Hamilton County courtroom. Beck faces 16 charges, while his co-defendant faces 7 for allegedly cheating investors of the now-defunct Christopher Technologies of about $200,000. They were the two principals in the former technology company that sold early warning software. That was an interesting read to see that, senators and representatives are not out of the loop on this one, and there were several of
resignations I've seen.
Absolutely, and that was another one.
For health reasons or taking care of my family.
Absolutely. I gotta, I gotta get out of this because there's some personal problems. Well, you've been charged with criminal activity. That seems like it's a big problem.
Right. Yeah. And it's going to continue.
Right, and it's just getting worse. Iowa today, the governor of Iowa there quoted on the political ticker at CNN, Biden, quote, dead meat in Iowa, governor says. Vice President Joe Biden, widely assumed to be plotting a third presidential bid in 2016, shouldn't bother booking any flights to Des Moines, Iowa, Governor Terry Branstad said. Quote, Biden is dead meat out here, end quote. Branstad asserted Wednesday in an interview with CNN inside his office at the Gilded State Capitol building. Quote, he is not going anywhere, end quote. Now, reading down into the story, quote, Washington, D.C. is extremely unpopular, he said. Biden is so associated with this administration and all of its failures. He was unpopular before, and he's even less popular now, end quote. I thought that was very interesting to see a governor turning on the administration as well, because as you know, FEMA is handed down by each governor, each board of directors, each board of governors, and that's what they are, but political cannibalism says go ahead and point the fingers at others and see what sticks.
Right, yeah, they're feeling the waves coming down, the drums in the jungle are sounding. And isn't Iowa, too, one in the political thing? Don't they do the first vote or something like that? It's usually the first one in the selection or something like that?
Right, the elective college, they've got a larger bishop base. When you go back to the electoral colleges, you find where they stand from, the 1802 Indemnification Convention, along with the 1802 and subsequent Enablement Acts, which were each state constitutions giving these colleges land, pretending to maintain that it was from the church. And as it falls, it's just absolutely crumbling. Babel's fallen, and a lot of these are trying to resign and get out of the line of fire, but it's not possible.
No, we know where they live at, huh?
Absolutely. In New York, more news about a Lewis County attorney charged with DWI in Henderson. Lydia L. Young, 30, of 10897 Route 26, Deer River, was charged with driving while intoxicated after Jefferson County Sheriff's deputies received a report of a vehicle off the road on Route 178 near Knoll Road in the town of Henderson about 2 a.m. on December 12th. That's just interesting that all of these attorneys are finally coming into where they should be, which is accountability.
Yes, it's I think at one time, wasn't the American Bar Association declared a communistic thing by the in the 50s or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just been like, holy crap, what are they doing? Because they're now, actually holding them accountable. They couldn't before because they were not the surety. They had these oaths under the banking statutes, 12 U.S.C. subsection 73, that they were not hypothecated. And now that they're hypothecated, their oath they're in not only violation, they're perpetrating bank fraud.
Now, did this happen because you offered a better economic model than what's presently going on? Is that correct?
No, not at this time, because they declined our offer. We were going to pay them to go ahead and administer and take up the position as basically the clearinghouse, and they declined the offer, and so we went around them to the House of Lords, and the Lords, the bishop actually is the one to maintain the bond, of course, and that bond is being collected on outside of the federal state, outside of the national state, because they did not want that business model, so they lost out on a lot of revenue and a lot of benefits. they could have otherwise gotten, but now it's too late. They just have to cannibalize each other, otherwise they don't have anything at all.
Oh, I
and
see.
They get rolled on.
Was that a psychological ploy?
No, because I didn't want all of this responsibility at all. I mean, here I am, just little me. I would have preferred if they would have went the right way. We wanted them to go the right way. You know, all that time I was assuming, well, there's got to be some innocence in there, and there's got to be some people that are, you know, are just being pulled along by collars and chains and whatever. And what we found was absolutely horrifying. They're not being pulled around anywhere. They like what they're doing. They enjoy human trafficking. And eventually, you know, we said it as it was. Well, now you're done. You know, now psychopathy is not to be around human beings. You know, it's something very profound, because to find, you know, prior to this and throughout my life, you know, I was into sociology and psychology, and the relative statistics on the psychopath is only 3% of all of the global populace. Right. And when we came up against the federal, state, and all of these attorneys, board of governors, and everything else, we found, whoa, that's where they're at. That's where they've always been at. It doesn't affect what people know as the citizen populace. There's even less of a rate of psychopathy. It's something like 1% or less than 1%. And the majority is in the establishment itself. And
Birds of a feather flock together then.
Absolutely. They just stuck together all this time. There is a judge charged out in Nevada. Let me look. Yeah, stateofdenial.com. I-Team, family court judge charged in $3 million fraud scheme, December 18, 2013. A controversial family court judge has been indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of defrauding people of more than $3 million over a 10-year period. Clark County Family Court Judge Stephen Jones, a 20-year member of the bench, has been charged by federal authorities with conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering crimes for devising and participating in an investment fraud scheme in which he and 5 others swindled more than $3 million from victims, announced Daniel Bargen, United States Attorney for Nevada. These things, I mean, it's just amazing to read day after day after day after day as they cannibalize each other, because, you know, for one, it took so long to get to this point in time, and I think we're all still in shock to see that they're actually doing it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the other day, the year and a day thing, and things have really ramped up, I'd say, within the last 90 days.
Right.
They've taken off like almost tripled.
Right, and you have the order that was handed down. You know, back in August, the IMF started the unwinding procedure, and the unwinding and putting everything back where it should be. And finally, you know, we're actually seeing the fruition of that now. At this point in time, we're not only seeing these new charges, we're also seeing the sentencing and guilty pleas, which is, I mean, that's unfathomable. They're pleading guilty and taking one for the team, it appears like, but it's not going to work or be so beneficial. And these poor attorneys, you know, for so long they were taking care of taking advantage of human beings, and to watch them now plead guilty for like slaps on the hands, or what appears to be slaps on the hands, a 90-day sentence, a 60-day sentence, but then the back end of that is like 5 years of probation. One got 10 years of probation the other day. So they're going to be very productive in the violation category, just like they were using human beings.
Right, yeah, it's almost like an inverted pyramid. Instead of the point being at the top, it's down at the bottom, and they're all being funneled and thrown into it.
Absolutely. And it's so different. It's just it really is the end of time as we knew it.
Yes. That was a big thing that I guess the media used in order to see the reaction of the public as a test balloon for, whatever reason they use it, to increase sales, commerce, and I guess to phone chatter, internet chatter and things like that for their next move, whatever that was. Because all of these things that have happened could not, by statistics, just happen out of a natural flow of things in my life. You know what I'm saying? From what I've seen going back 30 years ago to what has happened now, the events, the larger events have multiplied, enormously, and it just doesn't seem possible without any intervention from the two-legged snake,
Right. And it's different, isn't it? I mean, it's something that's, I don't know, it's hard to wrap your mind around at times. But we're all here.
Yeah, well, I was a little dizzy before all of this, and now I can understand some of it. And, sometimes I got to look in the mirror and say, gee, is this really going? But then when I start reading it and seeing it happen and hearing it being broadcast over not just your show, but, other shows are doing, mainstream and stuff like that, there's got to be something to it.
Right. And that was something... When they did the, they're coming up with new market conditions as well, and that's something that has been boggling my mind more than anything else. With this new defense that they were claiming down south, this affluenza defense, did you hear about that one?
No,
They let a male perpetrator of he had gotten in a drunk driving accident and killed human beings. And they had said that he suffered from affluenza, meaning that he had been over-consumptive, over-commercialized, and his parents raised him to be without certain forms of empathy and everything else. When you look at the dynamics of that diagnosis alone, they're going after the creators of the psychopath.
Now, affluenza, the root word is affluence?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay. Just add an OLGY on it of whatever you want, and it becomes...
They did it. What was funny is that as I've been following this new psychiatric diagnosis, they've crossed influenza with affluent, of course, which it maintains that it must be some kind of a epidemic, which is funny because the concept alone is just learned behavior. It's learned behavior. But this goes in line with the parental responsibility laws and what public law is designed to do. I mean, the creators of the female psychopath, the creators of the male psychopath, the feminine male, those are the ones we want. I want the psychiatrists. I want the attorneys. I want Congress. I want the CIA. I want everybody who's been involved in indoctrinating human beings to be living in this such a sick and twisted place to be held accountable for these things, because the sheeple or the lost sheep that were adhering to these shepherds, they're innocent. They're innocent as they walk through life, and as it progressively always gets worse, but it's good to see that they're actually holding them accountable under such a diagnosis in a new market condition. In Wiki it says affluenza is a portmanteau of affluence and influenza, is a term used by critics of consumerism. The book, Affluenza, the All-Consuming Epidemic, defines it as a painful, contagious, socially transmitted condition of overload, debt, anxiety, and waste resulting from the dogged pursuit of more. A potential criticism of the idea of affluenza is that it presents subjective social critique as an objective, inevitable, and debilitating illness. Now, it is. I mean, the people that have been raised like attorneys, they've been raised in that psychopathic mindset. They've been taught to just count human beings as objects. Don't worry about the human being as a being, to roll right over it, and everything else. Then that takes us right back to what they're reporting this week on that attorney who was victim of the carjacking. That whole story was an advertisement for the mall and an advertisement for Land Rover with very limited interaction when it came to that attorney's death. I mean, that's sick, but it's part of what this society is taught.
Yeah, George Carlin used to talk about that a lot in his routines. You know, in America, well, the world's a circus, but in America, you got a front seat. You got a ticket for the front seat.
Right, and you're witnessing it as well as being that actor, because when you're assuming these titles and subjecting yourself to these names, you're acting the part. If you're a good mom, you're acting a part. If you're a good dad, you're acting the part. If you're a good citizen, you're acting the part. If you're a licensed driver, you're acting the part. These are all characters in a play.
Yeah, this is almost like, I just lost it, to the 10th power. Keeping up with the Joneses to the 10th power.
Absolutely. And it's gone beyond anything that we can even conceive of based on what they had done. That's what the Pyongyang project is. The Korean Illinois project, they brought it over here, noticed that it worked well there when they corralled human beings, imported it to the public school system in Illinois, the Illinois Korea project. And from that point on, they've maintained human beings as these type of farm animals that are consumer. That is the consumptive good.
Yeah, well, I've spent a few days in Korea when I was in the military, and went out to the towns, and I was really surprised that the mama-sans over there were trying to hook me up with a juvenile female.
Right, and we saw accountability for that lately as well. Cambodia, they were doing the same thing. These females get into debt, credit card debt, medical insurance debt, psychology industry debt, criminal debt. And the minute they're in debt, they're selling their children to child trafficking to get out of debt. They're using their own babies by which to do that. So, and again, these are psychopathic females.
Yeah. Now, taking that model and bringing that to the point you brought about India, wasn't it a few years ago where banks went over there to try to give the females over there the opportunity to start their own businesses or whatever like that?
Absolutely.
You think that might tie in with what's going on there with the arrest of the diplomat or whatever it could be, part of it?
Absolutely. The United States Incorporated is not happy because they were found guilty of genocide. They are in the chute, and the trade agreements are with Korea and North Korea and India. And so what that means is that when India has a population of, 2.2 billion, and in that, to support that population, they have the trade agreements with North Korea for the natural resources, which are attorneys. The United States Incorporated is not happy with that.
Yeah. And also a few years back, too, I think Monsanto went over there, and they had a bunch of the farmers that committed suicide.
Right, because they were promoting GMOs, and they saw it coming. I mean, look at how they raised the quote, American back at the turn of the century. They took out all the farmland and they codified it and did all of this crap when originally they didn't have any authority to do so. They have to get that authority by consent, force and consent.
Here's a question for you, and I'm kind of thinking in the future. How is this information going to be stored and distributed to the rest of the population worldwide to understand these events that are happening?
Right now, you can see the change now in the mainstream media on the deprogramming effort, and it's to be employed on the public school system as well.
I know that was in the order. I read that the 2-year time frame for that.
Right. It takes 2 years to completely deprogram the human being from the state of politically correct or the politically correct model. It takes 2 years. I can get it down to 6 months, but that's with working with somebody like nonstop.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, relative state, the perfect mechanism would be 2 years, or the perfect time frame is 2 years through the educational system, and the amount of time that one teacher can spend with many students. And so we wanted to make it so that it was actually plausible rather than impossible. We don't want to do anything that harms human beings at all.
Right, yeah. They've been through enough trauma as it is, being so agitated and in a fearful state. That's what I find, just observing generally. People are real quick and they're short and they assume a lot on on little inferences. And it's amazing.
They take affront at many things because of that indoctrination of the title. You've offended my senses. How dare you offend my senses? Well, show me where your sense was harmed.
Well, the one they use down here is "you're rude."
Right.
Really, what does rude mean?
Right.
Come on.
Right. Show me where I hurt your emotions.
Right. Yeah.
I need you to show me those bruises or harm upon your emotions. And that's always been spoken. The truth hurts. Yes, it does hurt. I've been there. And you were there too. I mean, you were a patriot at one time. You were in the military. And so coming back out of that and realizing all of these things, it's like shell shock in itself.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I got out in '88, first thing I thought, I said, I'm going to make my own contracts, because I just came out of 8 years of contracts. And since then, I've done what I've done with that in mind. You know what I'm saying? If I don't get to control the contract, I don't enter into it. And I find something else. I find something else to do, and it's worked so far. But I've been. I have a few other skills too that I can utilize to do things. But I haven't killed myself like I did before. The only thing that messed me up is that when I had have an abdominal aorta bypass, and I've had 2 heart attacks, and I think that's all from the inoculations that I received from '80 to '88, because they had the thing going on. We were training to go to the Middle East back then, right after Russia.
Right. You were following like the Falklands, and you were following Pol Pot and everything too. So you had a lot of indoctrination to get through. That's terrifying.
And then they usually expect, if you stay for 8 years, that you're going to do 20.
Right.
And they offered me $18,000, and I looked at them and said, "You got to be kidding."
Right.
But a lot of guys, because they have families and stuff like that, and they love their families, but you've got a lot of time invested, this, that, and the other, and you got to make a choice. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet, but it's never in the favor of the individual family. It's always the corporate thugs that make out, if you read history. So
it is. It's something that waking up to this is, and I relate to that. In the beginning, of course, as a patriot, I had a family full of veterans, and my first husband was a veteran, and all of these things are like, it's so conflicting, and that's what they rely on, is that cognitive dissonance. When you fall back and you're like, oh, this can't happen, this can't be happening in my country. No, that just didn't happen. Even though you witnessed it, you still have that fallback quality, and that's what they rely on. And once you get out of that mindset, it's a lot easier to go forward. Absolutely easier to go forward. But it takes a while to get out of that mindset.
And then what happens is, at the same time, they're doing the Tokyo Rose thing, where they're telling the rest of the population who has no clue what's going on, it's almost like you're caught in between a crossfire.
Right.
And now you're carrying the target on your back. And it's the things that you've gone through, from what I've learned, don't sell yourself short. That's one hell of a life you've experienced.
Right. Absolutely. We've got the Association of Corporate Counsel on the hook, and when they're on the hook, everybody needs to be aware of what happens when somebody's on the hook, of course, in political cannibalism. Just now at Reuters, it says it was issued at 6:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. December 19th, ex-Microsoft manager and friend charged with insider trading. This is like the second one or third one in the last couple of weeks. I'll have to delve into that and do a separate audio this weekend. Quote, the U.S. Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission charged 2 Seattle men on Thursday with 35 counts of illegally trading on private Microsoft Corporation information, which prosecutors said netted the pair more than $390,000 in illicit profits over an 18-month period. Brian Jorgensen, a senior portfolio manager at Microsoft, passed information to a former colleague, online day trader Sean Stokey, who executed the trade, according to prosecutors. According to complaints filed by the department and the SEC, the scheme began in April 2012 when Jorgensen, 32, found out through his job in Microsoft's Treasury Department that his software company was planning a multi-million-dollar investment in the digital business of bookseller Barnes & Noble Incorporated. He passed that information to Stoke, now 28, who bought options betting that Barnes & Noble stock would rise. It jumped about 50% when the investment was announced in late April, reaping Stoke profits of more than $184,000, prosecutors said. But that's interesting because, as you know, Microsoft is one of the board members there at the Association of Corporate Counsel, so they're actually cannibalizing themselves now.
Yeah, well, they had that thing you posted a while back about Bill Gates and the guy that represents that organization. He kind of just threw him to the dogs, you know?
Absolutely, and it looks like it's just tearing itself apart. But again, any kind of monies derived out of prosecution would be in the realm of aiding and abetting the known enemy of humankind. And so the benefit to them is null and void. I mean, the attorneys, of course, are going to cash in on these things, but poor Microsoft is you know, it's now, you know, been tossed over the side of the ship, apparently, as general average.
Right, yeah. Now, speaking of ship, there was a movie, I don't know, by Alfred Hitchcock. It's called Jamaica Inn. And it actually depicts what you're talking about, how it was an inn set up, you know, in England, and they used a phony lighthouse, and when they would see ships coming in during rough weather, they would light the lighthouse and the ships would follow it in. They would beach themselves on a rock, then they had a crew that would go down and capture all of the goods. And the guy that was the head of the crew was the inn owner and also was the governor of the province. That's how I learned things years ago. Because in the older movies, they always showed those scenarios of how things were garnered and, you know, just the underbelly side or underhanded side of society.
Oh, yes, and I didn't realize until later. You know, I studied media theory for years and years. I did a dissertation on comedy and its use in human behavior modification or human conditioning. But as you come along, it's like, holy moly, you know, in the last year, I've watched such as Dune and the others, and there's a lot of disclosure out there in not only science, quote, fiction, but so many of the greatest authors, you know, Asimov and iRobot and things like that. I was never interested in those things because I was told, well, you're a girl, you don't like those things. Well, yes, I do. I enjoy those things, and I enjoy exploring new knowledge and new experiences. And part of that, I mean, Dune is all about feminism. If you look at the actual symbology and everything else, and it's just like The Wall. I love The Wall. The Wall just explains, you know, from inception to extension, you know, the action of feminism, the action of corporate policy, liberalism on humanity, and you know, like that movie, the whole movie, and Pink Floyd was vilified when they were vilifying rock, and I believe now that I've had so much opportunity to study these things in these latter years, that was their intent. They were intentionally trying to steer the mind elsewhere, and I urge especially females to go ahead and begin, you know, just looking at science fiction. Look look at it from not only the Twilight Zone, which is very interesting when you're going through those, especially the Obsolete Man. I think that's one of my favorites.
Exactly. Yeah, that one really says it all right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and The Network. I mean, there was a movie called The Network with Ned Beatty in it years ago. That one's amazing. They Live. I really like that movie, They Live. I mean, there is disclosure out there, and it's all over the place. Everything's written, and it's just really quiet disclosure. It's scary to go up against Congress. You know, we watched Thomas McFadden. We watched Lindbergh's son, you know. All of these things, they were punishing them, you know, and then in my own lifetime, they killed Nancy soon after she did a report to Congress regarding the corruption of child protection. But that's because everybody was reporting to Congress, including Jesus, way back when he was pointing fingers, and he says, woe unto you, you're going to be held accountable, woe unto you. But he wasn't holding them accountable. He wasn't rising above them in order to hold them accountable, and that's where we are now. You know, we're the players of the exchequer, basically, and you know, there's new pieces on that board, and it's such a profound thing to see now.
Well, it was really an opportunity that you had the training in the areas that you did, and to be able to see this and put the pieces together.
And I say that a lot because there's a cause in everything that happens. It's like my whole life. You know, I'm walking along, and it's been circular. It hasn't been like a linear travel in any way. It's been absolutely circular. So in my walk, I've gone from this place, and I've been burned this way, or this has happened and given me this experience. But each experience has added to the next step wherever I've gone on from there. So from this experience, that gives me it's basically like going up a flight of stairs. It gives me the next step on the stair, you know, and it's been absolutely insane because it culminated into where we are now. All in all, it culminated in where we are now, and I would have never said this years ago. It just looks like my whole life years ago was in absolute chaos. But
that's what it is. It's controlled chaos, and most people don't know it.
Absolutely.
Here's one I like. It's from that letters patent of King Henry VII, granted to his sons, John Cabot's 3 sons. This sounds exactly like the line they use in Star Trek: to seek out, discover, and find whatsoever. I mean, if you listen to the intro of Star Trek, and I've noticed that, you know, in other literary works and music especially, lyricists will, you know, they read a lot of stuff, and they'll use bits and pieces and craft a song. And if you've done a little bit of reading, sometimes, you know, some of the things are familiar. And when you read that one time, it kind of freaked me out, you know. I just said,
right, because they're discovering new human beings, and that's where the description comes in. So when they came upon my family, what's your name? Eric? Okay, that's Eric's son. What's your name? John. Okay, well, your son is Johnson. He'll be known by Johnson, you know, and that's when the children were taken and moved elsewhere as, quote, refugees. But this is, of course, following wartime. And these same perpetrators have implicated war against us and then been our saviors later. And as anybody in the military knows, that is just pure reconnaissance, fourth-generation warfare.
Right, yeah. You got to do the recon and do the intelligence because there's, you know, you don't want to lose resources. Right,
and what you're told in the military is resources is the stuff you have in your backpack. But what they're talking about is the citizenship that these soldiers helping them to take through the reconnaissance action, and that's where the implication of hearts and minds comes from. As we're moved about, you know, and kidnapped and stolen and taken elsewhere as refugees.
Yeah. Now, you were speaking last night with Bo about the SGL and Rocco about the insurance for servicemen, SGLI. Now, I remember when I signed it, we were instructed under the guidance. I mean, sat down in the room and were told to print the words by law on the form. What does that mean?
Say that again, and I'll get Rocco on here. Hold on a second, because he knows more about that than I do, I think. Now, you were talking about an insurance policy for soldiers or veterans?
No, it's called the SGLI, Servicemen's Group Life Insurance, when you enter the military.
Here's Rocco. I've got him.
Yeah, I think, I was talking on the show last night about, I guess, the hidden policy that's worth millions. What is the face value of that policy? Like $50,000 or something like that?
No, when I was in there, it was like about $12,500.
Oh, what was that again?
$12,500.
Yeah,
it's the payout. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That makes sense. But that's on the public side of things, what you see. But we all know that to the scenes, I hear it's worth millions. So I'm trying to get confirmation. So
what I was concerned about is that they had us all in a room to go sign the forms, and right above your name in a space they said print these two words, by law.
Oh.
By law. That's
bond.
Yeah, that's funny.
Bond, yeah. You know?
What's that?
Bond. It was a bond. So that instrument became a negotiable instrument after you signed it. So that's that's underwriting a policy of some kind. So that bond is going back into and being traded on the insurance derivative side.
Right. That's how they're getting. Yeah, they're using it in the public, and when you do that, was it in blank endorsement? I guess, or
right.
Yeah.
And you endorse it, and then they just hypothecate it, and that's
exactly. Yeah.
Do you have a copy of that thing?
I'll have to look. I lost all my papers in Katrina, but I might be able to find something, or get in touch with someone who might have one.
Right, and anybody else, if you're listening and you have that thing, I would like to see it, to see what it actually is, and how many times it's going to trade, because it would be in the wording of that document.
Right, and it's the same thing. When I started finding out about the hypothecation of the birth certificates, and it seems like it's the same mechanism. Same thing with mortgages and loans or whatever like that. They just trade in paper. They just need two signatures, like you look at on the FRN. There's two signatures on either side of it, so it makes it negotiable.
Right, it's got two seals and two signatures, so there you have it.
Sneaky, they real sneaky.
It's like a built-in power of attorney, contract, so much more, permission to hypothecate, consent.
Exactly.
Even if you're bearing it, if you have it, you're possessing it to the bearer, and it's like understood as a trust relationship. They're doing so much.
Well, the bills years ago used to have pay to the bearer on it, and now you can't find those, and
it's paid to the order of. So what you're paying to the order of, when you sign a check and you say pay to the order of, it's the order of that amount of FRNs that's on the check.
Right.
So if you say pay to the order of blah, 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 and you say $2,500, you're ordering lawful money for someone in the administration, and you're tricking out that $2,500 worth of debenture-based production.
Since they don't have heart, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think the point you were making is to the bearer, that you don't see that anymore because it's anonymity. You could walk in those old-time stocks, they call them bearer bonds, and the IRS doesn't like it because you can't track them, you can't trace them. Whoever's holding, burying them. So that was the crackdown.
Right.
On that.
Well, that was the whole thing, to find out where they gave it out. And now they came into collection mode. So they had to implement another mechanism, and they changed it when they took the gold, and they started issuing the new style of
negotiable instruments. Right.
And nobody knew any better.
No.
They just went along.
Right. And those bonds became basically money orders that were exchanged at the clerical level inside of the courthouses. Each court is a bank, of course, so you're exchanging those things and counterfeiting at the same time. They're counterfeiting at that junction point, at the clerk.
Right. Right in front of your eyes.
Yep. The FRN doesn't look like you, does it?
Oh, no. Dead presidents? No,
And it's supposed to be relative to human being or whatever it backs, and that's what was most amazing for us to have done, you know, in my mind, and awe-striking for me is that, you know, bottom line, that FRN looks like a fiction. It's an attorney. It's a banker. It's a bank. It's a judge. Because it's a fiction, they're a fiction. Now it's no longer counterfeit money.
It's trivia time. You know, we all call them dead presidents, but Ben Franklin wasn't a president. But they all share one thing in common. They were all postmasters. Postmaster.
Absolutely.
That's what they are. They're the postmaster general, and they're posting the you-know-what out of us. So.
Absolutely, but they also accept the liability that comes with that under shipping and 46 U.S.C. 311, 313, which is beautiful because that's their debt. That's not my debt.
And they're just tricking us out as per usual. But that is what they all have in common. They're postmaster generals. So.
There's the pattern. That makes sense right there. That says it all.
Yo, that's 100%. Because I was, wondering that. I'm like, wait a minute. Franklin was never a president. And then in my studies, I ran across that they were all postmaster generals. So.
The bag man that carried the deal,
Right.
Yeah.
When assuming the liability and garnering benefit on one side, and that's the action of the holder of surety bonds. They're leaving the liability elsewhere. Hold harmless. It's ridiculous.
Yep, hold harmless. You see those everywhere.
Yep.
It's like hot potato. Who wants to hold it?
Right. And it's sad that before the orders that were laying down from the United States court, the entity that was held harmless was, of course, the sheriff and attorneys and everything else, and now they're on the hook. Not the sheriffs, the attorneys are on the hook because they had taken the authority of the sheriffs completely out of the hands of the sheriffs when they started implicating the federal state upon them, people who were trained at Quantico and Langley and everything else. Even if they don't have the title of agent, they're still agents. They were trained as an agent. That's what they are. They're an agent on behalf of the principal.
Yeah, that's a lot of that training that goes, cross-training that goes on that I noticed. People from different, fields of study would acquire 4 or 5 different MOSs or whatever specialties, and you wonder why they would leave where they are, especially if they got 10 years in, and they're acquiring rank. Why would they move them from one to something totally different?
Right.
And it's mechanism. That's all it is.
It's mechanized, and part of that is an agent can alter ranks. The other ones, they leave you along that E or F or whatever else, and that goes all the way back to the 1929 Geneva Convention, because even officers in the military are still held under as a prisoner of war under their corporate state and don't even realize what they're patronizing.
Exactly, yeah. That's going to be a shock to many of them. Absolutely,
especially when you come out and you've served your time, and we've spoken about this before. You file or record your DD-214 right at the county recorder's office as a deed so that they can hypothecate you again after you served your quote country.
I never did go register mine.
Good.
Never did.
Good. Now you can get them just for the premise of it, because a document is a negotiable instrument.
Remember that thing I sent you about the Soldiers and Sailors Act? Was that any benefit?
How long ago? My email's so full right now.
Okay.
I'll have to go.
It was probably maybe 2 months ago or something like that.
I'll go look for it, and I'll have it ready by Saturday.
That's what Clinton used, the Soldier and Sailors Act, with Monica Lewinsky.
Oh,
okay.
He pulled that one. Oh, you can't touch me because I'm the commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
He's the...
Well, they had that all set up.
Yeah.
You know, his PR rep was a feminist. He was trying to make Hillary Clinton look like a female.
Well, and then, right, well, the whole thing is to protect sailors and soldiers. Right, you're fighting in a war, and they come and foreclose on you while
and
you're fighting.
They have absolutely abrogated that contract throughout this last year. We watched that case come out of North Carolina into Oklahoma, where he was deployed, and his girlfriend or whatever, the mother of his child, had come up with an adoption schematic while he was deployed. Yeah. They were actually suing him, but he was protected by this Soldiers and Sailors Act from being sued. The court found against him this year.
Wow.
Now, how is that possible? Because these soldiers that are being deployed, they were guaranteed protection from being sued while they were on duty. And now they've gone all the way backwards on that. That is sick. On top of, you know, Bo did a report a while back about the embezzlement of $8.5 trillion out of the Defense Department. This last year they've been rationing soldiers that are deployed overseas. And it just gets worse and worse and worse for our veterans. It's just horrifying.
It's the same model they're employing all over the place just before the country went into bankruptcy. You know, it's a heist. So they grab all the funds and then say, we're broke.
Absolutely, and they're trying that out in California. They're nailing people's retirements. I know I watched one come through this last week. A state patrol officer was employed for 10 years as state patrol, and all of a sudden the Department of Justice, Department of State comes in and finds out that she's an illegal immigrant, so they took her retirement.
Right, yeah.
I want to talk to her.
Yeah, we want to get a hold of her. So if anybody's listening and knows how to contact her, let us know.
Arizona.
This is just sick. Arizona?
Right, that was Arizona, that woman. That should be a red-hot story.
Absolutely. She's being screwed over by the same thing she was patronizing. And she believes, you know, of course, that she's an illegal immigrant and she's done something wrong. She hasn't done anything wrong. They just wanted her retirement, and they wanted it quickly.
And they plan on her obedience and goodwill.
Absolutely, because she feels bad. She had no idea she was here illegally, and she's been taught to be patriotic to this thing. And, you know, it's sad to see so many people being screwed over that were patriotic to this thing.
Yeah, it wasn't her obedience and goodwill that responded. It was flat-out fear, like they have everybody. The moment you hear flashing lights,
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back on Saturday. Thank you, Don, for co-hosting.